Man United beat Brentford 2-1 yesterday. It wasn't a classic. It was never going to be a classic. When have we ever played well against Brentford? There's always teams that come up from the Championship. They seem to always play well against us because I can't remember the last time we played well against a team like Brentford. I was at the stadium once when we beat them 2-1 when McTominay scored twice. I left early. I had enough. It was during a really bad spell. I was with my son and I just thought, forget it. Let's get home early, get the train back to London. I don't care. And then I could hear the 2 goals he scored late on at the metro station. Yeah, you might say I left early and I should have stayed to the end, but trust me, Man United were going through such an awful patch. Who could blame me? Now, more about the game. As I said, it wasn't a classic. We got over the line. At this stage of the season, it's not about performances, I reckon, especially with this team. We've had a Jekyll and Hyde season this year with the first 19 games and the following 19 games. Pre-Amorim, post-Amorim. I've always said that if we got to December and we just kept into touching distance of the Champions League spots, even with Amorim, we would have had a chance. However, obviously things changed and we are comfortably in the top 3, in the top 5. And I would even say now it would be a disappointment not to get third. We've grinded out the results. Some of these players are off form. They're finding it difficult to get some consistency, but individual players are getting us out. And there's one constant in everything, and that's Bruno Fernandes. What a player, another assist. And just remember, if he gets 2 more or 3 more assists, he beats the all-time record in Europe for most assists in one season. I am one of them people that get frustrated with Bruno Fernandes for being a bit petulant. However, we're only channeling all of our anger and frustration that we have with the team through him. Why? Because he's the captain, he's the most visual and vocal player in the team. In a bad era, he has been an absolutely fantastic player. For me, he's a legend, but he got us over that line and individuals are getting there. And that's a perfect segue for one really important question. Another player that's getting us over the line. Another player that's been pivotal, a legend in his position. That's Casemiro. Are we going to do it all over again? Should we do it all over again? You've seen the title of this video. It's not hyperbole. I'm trying to answer this with a sane head. Should we give this guy an extra contract? Will he even want to have an extra year's contract? Will he reduce his wages? Should we keep him on the books just because he's a legend? People look up to him? Or is it finally time to say we're looking in a new direction, we're moving these type of players on with these high contracts and we're focusing on a new solution? Now, there's no quick fix for a Casemiro. He's an elite player. Like I said, he's a legend in his position. But are we going to do it all over again? Let's just break down his career at United. He comes to Man United after 2 awful games, 2 awful defeats in Brighton and Brentford. When, remember, Brentford absolutely handed our asses to us. It was, I think, Brian and Mbeumo scored an absolute amazing goal or a counter-attacking goal that day. And then suddenly, panic buy. Days later, we signed Casemiro for around 70 million. The amount of arguments I've had with people saying that his fee was too high. Yes, it was too high, but you were getting an elite player. Maybe on the face of things, it was looking like he was at the end of his career, but Real Madrid were going in a different direction. It wasn't for the fact that Real Madrid didn't trust him as a player. It's the fact that maybe they thought it was time to move on and get a younger player. Fair enough. Fine, they went in a different direction. However, that didn't mean that Real Madrid didn't value him as a player and what he did and that he wasn't still world class. Remember, he had a very good relationship with Carlo Ancelotti, and reading all the reports that I did at the time, their relationship when he left, they were pretty upset. Apparently, Carlo Ancelotti cried. That first season, he came in and Ten Hag chickened out. The style of football he wanted to play, he couldn't do it in his first season. Second game, he changed it around and played a more counter-attacking football. And what happened? Casemiro looked great. Fantastic. World class. Without him, we would have messed up so many games and he contributed so much. But then he came into that second and third season where he dropped off. His fitness looked really off. His body shape, he looked chubby around the face. It was up and down, to say the best. And with the way Ten Hag played, left him in midfield all by himself to cover all that ground, it was very difficult for him to be in a midfield like that. He doesn't play like that for Real Madrid, even though, yes, he was that enforcer at the back and he had Modric and Kroos in front of him, but they were close by. They weren't bombing forward and leaving huge gaps in midfield so Real Madrid wouldn't get counted on like we did. And that was largely down to the way Eric Ten Hag played. And then Ruben Amorim came in, and yes, things changed for him. He had him 2 in midfield, things got better. His fitness started to improve drastically, and he just looked like that Casemiro in that first season. In fact, I will say this Casemiro in this half of the season, in this season, has been like no other for Manchester United, that is. It's even better than the first season. He's been elite. His 9 headed goals, are a record. Only Dwight York has got a similar amount. I think he's got one less actually. So Casemiro has the record for most headed goals for Man United in a Premier League season. That's unbelievable. And he always seems to score at pivotal moments. Now that goal yesterday he scored, everything just stood still when Harry Maguire headed it back into the corner. I was like, you got to be offside, but he just nodded it in with such ease. Again, the question is there. It's a legitimate question. Shall we keep him? I would unfortunately have to say no. Carrick came out afterwards. It was on The Athletic as well. They've already asked him. Both parties are in agreement. It will come to an end. Now, you could easily say, yes, give him. It's not as easy as saying give him another year, because will Manchester United want to pay 350k a week for him? No, it won't happen. I'm telling you that outright now. So to say just to give him a contract, give him 1 more year, it's very unrealistic, and he won't want to reduce that contract to stay for another year. No, I don't think he would. He's enjoyed himself here, or especially the 2 seasons that he's played well in. He's learned a lot, and he's got a connection to the fans, because something that similar to what Varane said, when he celebrated more with Man United winning the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup than he did the Champions League with Real Madrid. There seems to be this connection to the fans, that these players have come over and enjoyed a lot more than they did with Real Madrid. They seem to be loved more, the way we sing their names, the way the fans are always there before and after the game waiting for the players. They seem to love it. And remember, these are legends of the game in Varane and Casemiro. The game he played against Liverpool in that final, I mean, he was man of the match for me. Unbelievable. And it was great to see him there, and to have him at Man United. Ultimately, I would say, unfortunately, it's time for him to move on. It's not the fact that I'm saying that because I don't like the player or he can't contribute, and he can't obviously contribute behind the scenes in the dressing room because players look up to him. It's the fact that we need to move on. Them wages need to come off the books. He won't reduce his contract, and we need to look to the future and get that new player in, whether it's Chouameni or it's Anderson and a Belieber. We need to find the perfect partner for Kobbie Mainoo. At the end of the day, we could look at the performance. Yeah, it wasn't great, but I will still celebrate. I'll still celebrate any Man United win, because it's super important, especially where we were to where we are now. And I guess now we look forward to the Liverpool game with a little bit more of ease. The pressure is kind of off, but you don't want to go into that game not wanting to beat Liverpool. I'm quite positive about it. But again, they're the famous last words. It is Liverpool at the end of the day. We'll talk about that on my preview when it comes up towards the end of the week. But that was it basically. So yeah, we're practically in the Champions League. We can start getting them Champions League shopping lists out. We can start looking at all the reports of how much money we got to spend. And again, the Casemiro question. Thank you very much, Cassie. But you've been a great servant. But it's time to move on, and maybe you go and find a new challenge, maybe back in Europe somewhere, or in Brazil. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching. This is a new channel. Please, can you like and subscribe? See you on the next one.